Greetings and salutations to all those out there in internet land. I am the Renegade of Wrestling J.J. Williams, coming to you here on the Casa D18 Studios YouTube channel, as well as UnlimitedRadio247.net. And get right down to it today. We've got a few different questions from both Facebook and YouTube, one of which is a top 5 that was requested of me, so I'm going to get to that. First thing, Ricky Lawson wants to know from Facebook, what is my first impression of this new group of Dolph, AJ, and Big E Langston? I am impressed. It looks like WWE is starting to get a couple of stables up and running there with the Shield and this group. It'll be interesting to see what comes along as far as a babyface contingent to help go after these groups. AJ as a heel, I think, is really good, a lot better than AJ as a face. Dolph, love Dolph. I think he's an excellent worker. I think he's got what it takes to lead this group. Big E Langston, the jury is still out on. You know, people on the internet are calling him Ryback already. First thing I thought of when I saw him on Monday night was that it looked like Bobby Lashley in Nation of Domination colors. We'll see where he goes. I mean, the one move he's shown so far has been pretty impressive, but what else has he got? You know, is he a limited moveset guy, or can he actually go out there and impress us? Time will tell on that. Jason Simone. JJ, why do you think the monster gimmicks like Undertaker, Kane, Boogeyman have gone? Because it's not that type of era in wrestling anymore. It's a PG era. You know, you can't really have the Demon of Death Valley, the devil's favorite demon, you know, in a PG era. Think about how quickly Kane got changed. It's like he came back a year ago, smothering people with towels with chloroform and shit. And now all of a sudden, I'm the tag team champions. What was the whole point of going back to the mask and the dark gimmick? You know, they basically completely killed any credibility that he had coming back as this monster by making him a joke. Undertaker is a once-a-year wrestler, at best, anymore, because he's just too far up there in age. His body can't hold together like it used to. You know, at best, you'll maybe get a Rumble and a WrestleMania out of the Undertaker in a calendar year. You know, he just can't do it anymore. As far as the Boogeyman, that's more of a PG-esque type of gimmick because it's way over the top and comical. But still, you got a dude coming out, smashing clocks over his head, feeding people worms, biting moles off of people's faces. The PG era just isn't the place for that type of over-the-top gimmick right now. That's why they've all disappeared. Adam Buskirk says, what do you think of Del Rio's face turn? And also, do you think that with what happened on Raw this past week, Vicky is heading for a face turn? I don't know what to think about Del Rio's face turn. It's like, Del Rio was starting to get to that point after only a couple years where fans were respecting him for what he did because he was a great worker in the ring. So I kind of like Del Rio's face turn, but the fact that they got him, you know, shaking Miz's hand and high-fiving fans on the way to the ring, it's like, seriously? What was he doing not even a month ago? You know, so I'm not really sure yet about that. It's like, right now, I'd prefer him to walk a tweener line, personally, where he can team up with Miz and Cena and Ryback one week, and then the next week come out there and be aligned with like Dolph, just because he's going to be great in the match regardless of where he is. I think he needs to be more of a I'll team with somebody if it benefits me type of shtick and scenarios, as opposed to being a full-on babyface or a full-on heel. I think that would work better for Alberto, because he's a Mexican aristocrat. You know, he's all about making the money. Wherever he sees the most money to be made, should be where he is on any given day. You know, almost like a mercenary. As far as Vicky Guerrero, when I was watching the Dolph-Vicky interaction backstage, initially I thought Dolph was heading for the face turn, but then Vicky swerved us by saying she was going to team with John Cena. It was like, really? Why is Vicky going to be the babyface? Fans are already cheering Dolph Ziggler. You know, why are you going to make Vicky face? She's better as that hated heel than she is a babyface. But it does look like that's where things are heading, whether we like it or not. Don Marlin, hey JJ, was wondering, do you ever see Jimmy Jacobs in the WWE? And if so, who would you book him with? Well, I don't see him in WWE, quite frankly. But if I had to book him with somebody, I think I would probably think I might have to have him alongside Seth Rollins. And if y'all out there don't understand why, do your homework. I'm going to just leave it at that. Over on YouTube, Nappy1987 asked me for my top 5 ladder matches of all time. This was tough. Really tough. I had to go back and comb through all the ladder matches, whittle them down. I know I'm going to get hate on some of these. I know y'all aren't going to agree with a lot of them. You know what to do. Either put your 5 in the comment box, leave me a video response, whatever, telling me why you disagree. But my top 5 ladder matches of all time are number 5, Undertaker vs. Jeff Hardy from Raw, July 1st, 2002. Hands down. I already mentioned that last week as far as an underrated match. And that's why I put it up here at number 5 on the ladder matches. It was a great ladder match with a guy in there that you never thought you'd see in a ladder match. Number 4 from Armageddon 2006, London and Kendrick versus Eminem versus the Hardys versus William Regal and Dave Taylor. All I gotta say is seesaw into Mercury's face. That's about right there. And again, you got Regal and Taylor, who you don't really think of as ladder match guys, in there with London and Kendrick, Morrison and Mercury, and Matt and Jeff. It was a phenomenal ladder match, in my opinion. Number 3, SummerSlam 1998, The Rock and Triple H. That was right around the time I started to get into wrestling. I always thought that match was brutal and just well put together. It will always hold a special place in my heart. Number 2, and this one you guys are probably going to have to go to ProWrestlingGorilla.com or HighSpots.com to buy the DVD. Pro Wrestling Gorilla, The Next Show, from September 2004, Scott Lost versus Joey Ryan for sole possession of the tag team titles. These two had been teaming together as the X Foundation for a while. They were starting to break up. They were the current tag champions together, and they had a ladder match to determine who would get sole possession of the straps and then could then choose who they wanted to have as their partner. The match was awesome. And my number 1 ladder match of all time, No Mercy 1999, the Hardys versus Edge and Christian. Oh, Renegade, what about Shawn versus Razor? How come you don't have that on there? Everybody talks about Shawn Razor. It was a great match, don't get me wrong. But everyone talks about that match. That, personally, is not one of my 5 favorites of all time. That's what Nappy1987 asked me for. So that is what I gave you. I would like to throw an honorable mention in there, though, for John Cena versus Dolph Ziggler at TLC this past weekend. That match was awesome. From the storytelling to the spots to AJ's heel turn to Dolph being able to reclaim his briefcase and win. There were multiple times in that match where I thought Cena was going over, and they managed to swerve me and keep me on the edge of my seat. So I'd like to give that one an honorable mention spot. The last question for today, and go back to Facebook. I'm bringing this one last because it doesn't really have anything to do with wrestling. Philip Evans says, "Hey JJ, do you think Bruce and Statboy could do an episode talking about the top 100 best songs of the 80s? I asked Bruce and he said he'd be down for it, but I had to ask you first." Well, for those of y'all that don't know what he's talking about, last year when Statboy first started his show, we did VH1's top 100 songs of the 90s and the 2000s, and he would like for us to do the 80s songs in the same vein. I would love to do it. I will actually talk to Statboy this weekend, see if he's down for it. If so, I would say give us about a month to get the list, and for Statboy to do his stats as far as number one, how long was it at number one, blah blah blah, that type of stuff. So I would say the best case scenario, Philip, would be around the beginning of February to look for it. Worst case scenario, Statboy will come on next week and tell you guys that he doesn't want to do it. I'll leave the ball in Statboy's court. But Bruce is down. I'm always down to talk about music and get a little bit away from wrestling every now and again. It's up to Statboy because it's his show essentially. Because we rant about music, so it's a Statboy rant show. That'll do it for this week from Renegade Wrestling. Make sure you guys have a safe weekend. I will see you guys here next week on Monday, Christmas Eve. Until then, thank you for watching. We will see you next time right here on the Casa D18 Studios channel, as well as on Unlimited Radio 247.net.